few years ago, there was a horrible accident at one of the amusement parks. A woman was thrown from the roller coaster type ride and killed. The investigation following the accident showed her death was totally preventable. She simply hadn't been locked in. The young man in charge of that function was too embarrassed to tell her that because she was overweight, he couldn't click the latch on the belt, which would have held her on the ride. Many of us can identify with that worker. We'd also like to live in a hassle-free life, avoiding situations which would create tension between ourselves and others. On one hand, he certainly avoided the tension that could have resulted from telling her she was too obese to be on that ride. On the other hand, his reluctance to speak out cost her life. I presume from today's 3 readings that God's prophets frequently find themselves in parallel situations. They are chosen by Yahweh, or the risen Jesus, to be the conscience of the people. They are to proclaim God's word. Yet, as we hear in our Jeremiah passage, there are good reasons why they're often tempted to keep their mouths shut. Jeremiah ought to be put to death, the princes say. One way to make certain the prophet doesn't deliver God's word is to kill the prophet. It works every time. Though Jeremiah is eventually delivered from the princess's hands, I presume every time he opened his mouth again to tell the people what Yahweh wanted of them, he remembered this near miss. The next time he might not be so lucky. No wonder in chapter 20 he wishes he'd never been born. This prophecy thing is very important for Christians. The earliest Christian author, Paul, presumes each of our communities is blessed with at least one person who has the Spirit's gift of prophecy. He's convinced other Christs can't function correctly unless their members understand what the risen Jesus wishes them to do. That seems to be one of the reasons Luke's Jesus wants his followers to know, I have come to set the earth on fire. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. Those who dare imitate him must be aware of the divisions in society such as an imitation will bring about. Perhaps that's why the unknown author of the letter to the Hebrews insists we constantly keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. Only by focusing on him will we be able to persevere in running the race that lies before us. Before any of Jesus' disciples suspected that he was divine, they were certain he was a prophet. Though he never demanded they imitate his divinity, they knew from the beginning he expected them to integrate some of his burning prophetic charism into their own lives. Normally we expect our sacred authors to tear into their readers for not listening to the prophets and carrying out their words. But today the author of Hebrews and Luke's Gospel look at prophecy from the other side. Both tear into us for not being brave enough to proclaim even the small bit of God's word with which the Spirit has gifted us. Though the vast majority of us aren't full-time prophets, as other Christs, we frequently run into situations in which we say nothing where something should be said. We shouldn't pretend to be overly pious, but especially among family and friends, neither, for instance, should we hesitate to confront racial or prejudicial remarks. Certainly wouldn't want anyone close to us to be flung off the ride.